Okay, thank you everybody for coming. As we step through the slides, I'm going to go through what the mapping represents and how it was created. So next slide. So this is just a disclaimer about the information. The maps that I've created that you can see on the wall at the back and are in the slides are based on a very simple calculation. I've taken the publicly available elevation data from the state and federal governments, and I've subtracted that from the flood heights to get depths. So the little points on the maps are just sort of spot depths, and I'll go through some of those. So it's literally just filling the glass with water. It's not taking into account runoff, storm runoff, or any other events. It's just lifting the level of the water out of the floods. This is a good example of storm runoff, and I believe a dam breaking up near Planet Lighting. This is not flood level, this is just runoff out of a separate catchment. What was that, sorry? That's in front of the medical centre, you can see, and there's other photos that show between Triple B and... So this is the data that's been used. This is the elevation data and the state government website. You can pull it down in blocks that cover different areas and then you can use it. And the flood heights I've used out of a report that Bellingen Council commissioned about flood risk management in the lower Bellingen and Klang, so that's where the data's come from. The software I've used is an open source geographic information system called QGIS, and a plug-in, you'll see some elevation profiles. So this is an interesting one. This is the flood data I've pulled from the report. Hopefully I won't get too close to the speaker. So this is 2013. So if you've been here for the last sort of 30 years, you haven't seen a decent flood. This is the 1974 flood at 9.5 metres. The 1950 flood at 10.4. This one up here with the blue line is the record flood height at 11.5 metres that was in 1870. The next line up at 13.5, the Lismore flood record was broken by 2 metres. That line represents where the flood would go up to. And the very top line comes out of a figure in the report, which is the maximum probable flood height, which is 16.74 metres. Okay, so basically what I've done with these maps is I've used the elevation data to give the impression of water lying on the ground. So this is the 1974 flood at 9.5 metres. And one of the important things, you probably can't see it from your seats, is at 9.5 metres there's 5.2 metres of water over the bridge. At the corner of Dal and Hammond there's already 3/4 of a metre of water. So basically once a flood hits 9 metres, then all the houses in the lower area of Hammond and Black Street are going to be isolated. The other really important thing to note is you can see the heavier white at the back of the showground. That's up to about a flood of about 10 metres. That's the direction the water's going to come from. It's going to fill back up from the east. Again, you know, this is just based on filling the glass with water, so it doesn't take into account stormwater runoff like the photo of the 2009 event. This is a bit closer zoom in for the 2000 and the 9.5 metre. At Hammond Street, Black Street, the end of Black Street, there's already 1.76 metres of water there. So it'd already be over your head if you were standing there. At the corner of the pavilion just out here, I'm told in the 74 flood, the water didn't come into the pavilion. So the water would have come up lapping to it, but you can see the luncheon pavilion, there's a metre of water just outside it, and somebody, I think Tim said this morning, that there was 6 inches of water through the luncheon pavilion. So this is an elevation profile. So you can see over here you've got, this point is the northern end of the bridge at 4.3 metres. You can see it climbs up to over 10 metres around Black Street and the top of the road coming up, and then it dips down. And this is the lowest point on Hammond Street before it goes back up, and that's the roundabout up there. So it's about 8.7 metres. So you can see, again, once it gets over, that sort of level, then you start being isolated in the lower end.
Is that all the same flood?
No, this is purely elevation level. So this is just the height of the ground. So down at the bridge, so we know the bridge goes over at 4.3. And then the next, and it will sort of slowly come up, but there's a low point on Hammond Street, Dale. There's quite a stretch you can see, so it's not just a little dip. It's basically from just this side right up to pretty much the top of the near the bus shelter, where it starts to rise as that dip. This is the same sort of elevation profile for Black Street, and the lowest point is 7.7 metres. So if you're at the eastern end of Black Street, once you are getting close to an 8 metre flood, then you really want to be getting out, because it's not far after that Hammond goes under. And this is along Dowell Street. The point here is at the intersection of Hammond. There's a bit of a rise, and then there's a dip. You can see the red dot. That's the lowest point in that first section of Dowell. So again, that's not an option as an escape route for anywhere. So this is the 1950 flood again, just to show where the water's lying. Now, the shallower the water, the lighter the colour's going to be. You can see the river channel as white. You can see the deeper channel, but you can also see water pooling up round Dowell and up behind the medical centre and stuff like that. So this is the 2009 flood, so it was at most 8.8. There's about 1.5 metre drop between the corner of the pavilion out here and the commentators building that you can see there. So this is the 1974 flood. Now, one of the things with these photos is we actually don't know when they were taken, whether the flood water's still coming up or going down or it's at the peak. But it gives a very good idea of the inundation of the area. You can see the end of Black Street's under. You can see most of the showgrounds under, and it would have been over Hammond Street. So this is the 1950 flood. So it was 10.5, so it was a metre higher than the 74 flood. You can see the buildings right up in the top right, which are the ones above the bridge and backing onto Black Street. There appears to be water running through them, or at least to their foundations and stuff. This is looking from just west of Bellingen. The tall building you can see is the lodge, so that's Waterfall Way just west of town. Okay, so this is a representation of what's believed to be the record flood in 1870, which went to 11.5 metres. You can see it's a lot whiter and light blue, indicating the depth. There are things like the depth in different areas is 2 metres, so it's 2.7 at the corner of Dale. So water, there's I think 3 metres at the corner at the end of Black Street. So, we'll go to the next one. So this is basically, as I said before, the record in Lismore got broken by 2 metres. This is a representation of the record flood plus 2 metres. So this is 13.5. Some of the interesting things are at the end of Black Street, there's now just under 6 metres of water, 5.7 metres of water. There's 9 metres, 9.2 over the bridge. There's almost 5 metres at the corner of Dowell and Hammond. And there's a point up on the roundabout which says 0, so the water level would be sitting at the roundabout just below the Prov. This is zoomed in, so this is, you can see the 4.75 at Dowell and Hammond. There would be 4 metres, nearly 5 metres in front of the medical centre, 5.2 metres at the luncheon pavilion. So, very, it starts to get really serious. So this is a figure. This is the Bellingen's probable maximum flood height. So this came out of the council report, and it basically says if we had the maximum possible rain, the high tides were backing up, the maximum possible height we could get would be 16.74 metres. Some of the figures, we've now got 12.5 metres of water over the bridge. In front of the houses, just above the road, there's now 6 metres, 6.4 metres of water. At the end of Black, there's 9 metres of water. At the, where are we? At the intersection of Dowell and Hammond, there's 8 metres of water, and there's 3 metres of water over the roundabout. So the water would be up into the Prov quite substantially. So this is, I just went back to that one just to, now you've seen the maps, this is sort of going back to the possible flood heights and records being broken and maximum possible flood. I think that's the last one, yep. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions about the mapping or? No? I have access to the topography in the software that I use. I've downloaded like a contour map. I can access those. That's what the elevation heights are sort of based on, the same source information. So, the accuracy of the elevation data was recorded with a plane flying over with what they call radar. So the accuracy of the elevation data I've worked with is 30 centimetres vertically and 40 centimetres horizontally. But the figures, like when I've looked at called up the elevation data at the northern end of the bridge, it's 4.3 metres, which tells me that the data is pretty accurate in this area. Some areas, say on the slope of the escarpment, it might be out a bit more just because the slope